So I thought that Shock and Awe was going to be just a clone of The Post, and I was going to have all the same problems with it. But it was everything The Post wanted to be, and people said it was, but wasn't. This was just a wonderful tribute about journalism and the importance of truth and fighting for truth that's very relevant today, and I'll explain why. And the problem that this movie identifies, so it's about the build-up to the Iraq War and how all the journalists, all the American media outlets, there was just a system-wide failure to speak out against the war, and everyone went along with it. There's this great lower third. They show at one point the Iraq War, where were the journalists? And the answer, where they were. There's a lot of reasons why they didn't speak out on it, but one is this issue of access that they bring up that no one really talks about, and it's a problem you see with reviews as well. And you might say, well, with journalism, obviously it's a bigger issue because when people don't speak out about things, there can be wars and death. With talking about TV or movies, who cares? Well, if you think culture matters, then I think it does matter, maybe not as much as real journalism, but I think it matters nonetheless. Now, the problem with access, when you start out on YouTube, first thing you'll notice is there's a direct correlation between the number of hours that pass between something coming out, you reviewing it, and how many views you get. And it's almost a direct relation. You can have people with very different subscriber counts, and even the person that, even if you don't have as many subscribers as someone, if you get it out before them, you can sometimes beat them in how many views you get. It's just remarkable just how much speed matters. Now, you may naively think this is unique to people making reviews on the internet, but it's the same issue that's going on with journalism. And there's that same rush to get your thoughts in order, organize them, and get it out first, because being first is everything. I think there's a saying, better first and wrong than second and right, and it's unfortunately true. So you'll be frustrated, but eventually you'll realize that you have to try to get your thoughts out as quickly as possible, spend less time editing, less time condensing your thoughts, because all that matters is speed. But then an idea might pop in your head. What I'll do is I'll go to the people that make the stuff I'm reviewing, and I'll say, look, give me access to it before all these other people, and I'll, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, I'll write a good review, a well-worded review, but really, there's that unspoken agreement, you're not going to say anything too negative. And then what happens is a group of people say, well, look, this is better for all of us. We're all going to form a little cartel. We're all going to get the stuff in advance. We're going to have lots of time to prepare our thoughts. We're going to put out really good content, and it's better for everyone. Except certain stuff doesn't get said. And if it's just one person doing it for one article, you may not think it matters. But when it's a whole group of people over a whole group of time, always not saying certain things and always pointing at certain things and not pointing at other things, you can see how it can become a bit of a problem. And it's so easy to rationalize this when we live in an age with so much information out there, so much good information, bad information, people on every side of the issue making contradictory arguments. It's so easy to look at all that and say, I as an individual, I'm never really going to know. Never going to know with any certainty which side of the issue really is correct. And if I can't know with any certainty, what's the point of me making sacrifices for this abstract ideal of truth that is maybe unknowable and probably certainly unknowable by a single individual? And we get this great line in the movie where the reporter, he's talking to his girlfriend, and she talks about the Appalachian Trail and hiking it, and how, I was going to do it, but then I realized how long it would take, and it's a lifetime of work. And he kind of looked at her and he's like, well, we'll hike it together. And what I took from that is to be a reporter and to actually spend your life dedicated to an idea of the truth. It's a full-time, lifetime process, and it's so hard because there's so much information out there. So many people have biases and an agenda. To sort through all that and to stay on top of things and to consistently try to weed the good from the bad, it's a lifetime task, and it's an incredibly thankless task. Sometimes we get movies that glorify the truth seekers, but for the most part, people who seek the truth don't get glorified. And even the people in this movie who, they were right about the Iraq War, everyone else was wrong, and everyone admits that they were right and everyone else was wrong, they don't get that much glory. They go on TV, do a few interviews, they get this movie out, which gets a tenth of the publicity of the Post and 1% of the publicity of Avengers. So even if you seek the truth and miraculously you're proved right, you're still not going to get that much glory. So it really is a lifetime of work for a somewhat thankless job. Thankless job. Lack of reward. And there are very sophisticated and enticing philosophies about rejecting objective truth. And people don't usually talk about Nietzsche. One of his fundamental insights was that all these philosophies and logical arguments that people come up with, these very famous philosophers come up with, they're really just justifications for whatever identity and whatever interests and urges they have. They then build up these things that they claim are logical and universal and objective, but really it's just them as a particular individual who belongs to a certain group creating these things to advance and justify their group. And that's been taken up by the left. There's a long history of that, but people on the right certainly there's prominent thinkers that think that as well on the right, whether it's far right, Richard Spencer, more moderate, I guess, Jordan Peterson. He got in this argument with Sam Harris about objective truth. And it's interesting, Jordan Peterson, he's most famous for criticizing postmodernism, but he shares that core belief with postmodernists that objective truth isn't the most important thing, and there's more important truths perhaps than objective truth. So it's a very persuasive philosophy that a lot of people buy into. And another reason why this movie was so great is the Iraq War, which wasn't that long ago, is a great example. There was a intellectual movement, neoconservatism, that they believed that the nitty-gritty specifics about Iraq and the different tribes there, it wasn't important. What was important is that neoconservatism, they had this kind of grand vision for the world and this kind of united ideology, and they had a kind of unity, and they were just going to inflict their will on the world, and any kind of facts and quibbling, it wasn't going to be important in the grand scheme of things. And we see a lot of the similar talk with certain individuals now. And obviously Iraq, forget the just human devastation, but the neoconservative intellectual movement collapsed. American standing and prestige in the world, it was a complete failure. So we just saw this kind of idea that objective reality, objective facts aren't really important. What's important is different things: loyalty to your group, being strong, having a kind of vision, creating your own destiny. So this was a really good movie because, as someone very much raised in this kind of modern intellectual environment, deeply suspicious, anyone who talks about truth and objectivity, you view them with, at best, kind of a condescension and think of them as naive. At worst, you think they're sinister and concealing their deep bias and any kind of their claims to objectivity. It's only to deceive other people into thinking they're objective when they're not. So for someone who has certainly steeped in those kind of views, to see this movie, which was honestly just a really, you may think it's silly, but a very nice tribute to truth and people who seek the truth, and how even making this video, you know what gets views and what doesn't, and you know making this video you're not going to get views, you're not going to get likes, which can hurt more. People just look at it, think it's weird, not know what to think, and just move on. But movies like this, they can motivate you to put out the video, because on some level maybe it'll matter.